So after 3 long, painful, lonely years, I have finally emotionally gotten over Game of Thrones, the greatest series that ever was, that became somehow also the worst series that ever was. I promised myself I would never love anything again. I would never open myself up and get obsessed with something or someone or anything. I will never emotionally connect with something so purely, so completely, and so obsessively to a dangerous extent. I will never do it again. I will never do it again. And it's been 3 years of slowly seeping out words like Iron Throne, Hand of the King, politics in general. And then House of Dragon comes along and is like, get ready for another 5 to 6 years of being absolutely obsessed with something, and then you're just going to spend 2 years just being furiously angry, disappointed like a father, very disappointed like a father, but also just furious, just so furious. So the Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon, is finally upon us, and I have been completely mixed about this series. On one hand, it's so exciting to be back in this world. The aesthetic of this universe is just so gorgeous. Ramin Djawadi is back with the soundtrack, and it's just beautiful and magnificent again. It's so exciting to see this fantasy world brought back to life. It's so beautiful. It's got the scope and budget of the last couple of seasons, but it's kind of starting back up again from season 1, and it's just hearing all these names, like someone's like, I'm from House Baratheon, and this Targaryen, and just all these words. The Hand of the King's talking, and they don't have to be like, so I'm the Hand of the King, and that means this and this and that. It's like, no, I see the pin. I saw Game of Thrones. I watched every episode 500,000 times. I know what's up. Well, not the last 2 seasons. Obviously, I only watched them like once or twice. Obviously. But it's just so great to be back in this world. Although a part of me still is, and this is what I felt like as soon as they announced this show. I was like, I really just wish we were still just watching season 10, maybe 11 of Game of Thrones. Or maybe they just took a break and we're watching season 7 now. So there will always be that lingering sense in my mind, no matter what kind of spin-off universe we'd get in the Westerosi Game of Thrones universe. No matter where we go or what we see in any spin-off, I'll always be frustrated and furious that we're not just watching all the characters that I love and adore from Game of Thrones. I just want to see that series like fixed and done proper, and I guess I'll just wait for the books they'll never come out, but in 15 years, just say they come out, we can see an anime of the show where it actually does all the things. It doesn't just go, oh, book 4, more like in the bin, book 4. Insert a funnier joke there, obviously. But before I get lost in a tirade of just how incredibly furious and angry I am at the end of Game of Thrones, and just how much I love Game of Thrones, but then how much I don't, and just, ooh, those mixed feelings of coming back into that universe, let's just talk about House of the Dragon for what it is, what it represents. And first off the bat, it's so funny to hear characters' names where I'm like, I vaguely remember that name and this, like I read all the books, I got obsessed, I just loved Game of Thrones everything for so long. I think maybe 5 years ago, I would have probably known exactly what was going to happen with every character, who they were, what they did before and after all of this stuff. But as soon as those last couple of seasons started happening, it just slowly just like seeped from my memory. I just realized, hey, you don't have to be crazily obsessed with this thing that's clearly and slowly breaking your heart. Then the final season happened, I'm just like, it's just gone. I just let it disappear. It was like the Men in Black had come and just went, Game of Thrones knowledge, and I wasn't wearing the glasses, so it just all went. And I'm kind of thankful for it now, because characters will come in and do stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that guy's name, the dragon was named after him, or something, or whatever, but who cares? And so I'm kind of watching it with these fresh eyes, which is just really, really exciting. So House of the Dragon doesn't have D&D, the debaucherers, the defilers of Game of Thrones final seasons. Yes, they gave us the good stuff at the start, but maybe they should have just, given the reins to someone else. It's not the video for that. So we've got 2 new showrunners this time. Some guy and Miguel Chapotnik. I've probably said that wrong, but you know the guy who made 4 of the episodes in the back half of Game of Thrones, 2 of the best ones in season 6, The Battle of the Bastards and The Winds of Winter. Fantastic, amazing episodes. But then he also made 2 of the worst episodes, probably 2 of the 3 worst episodes, The Long Night, the worst thing anyone's ever seen in their entire lives. But I guess it's not his fault, but also he shot it too dark and the action's not that great, so kind of it is his, I don't know, it's everybody's fault. There's nothing good going on in that episode, but also the bells toll, or the bells make her mad, or whatever the episode is called, where the bells go and Daenerys is like, ooh, I'm mad now. He did that one. There's some good spectacle and action in it if you watch it like a bloody Rommel and Emmerich movie. But for a Game of Thrones, it's like, yeah, but I guess that's just the writing once again. So this guy has done some great stuff, and I'm really excited to see where he kind of takes the series, and he directed this episode. And this episode looks spectacular. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It is so awe-inspiring and grand and epic. It's everything you love and remember from Game of Thrones. It is just so cool to be back in this world, but the budget is already magnificent from episode 1. Because you rewatch the first season, it's the best season, but there is stuff where you're like, oh, I can't wait for them to get, that big budget they kind of deserve. And then when they get that big budget right at the end, the story is complete garbage. And it's like this really horrible juxtaposition. And at that point, it's almost comical and farcical that we don't have any of the politics and nuance that we had at the start, but we have the big bombastic Hollywood blockbusters feeling to it, but none of the good stuff. Whereas this starts off, we've got a big dragon flying about. I love the redesign of the dragons as well. Like the other 3 dragons from Daenerys Dragons, they all kind of just look the same, but different colors-ish, Whereas this, they all have we see 2 of them, but they have a very unique, different style. Like, as soon as we see Matt Smith's dragon, Daemon, I'm just going to call him Matt Smith of House Targaryen, the evil one, and his dragon just looks so evil. It's all like, ooh, I'm an evil dragon, I've got a big long neck, and just the design of them is so gorgeous and brilliant. It's so exciting to be already there with the dragons, rather than having to build up dragons as they slowly grow older. Which of course was fun, but it's just so great to be in this part of the story already. The thing straight off the bat that really struck me was just how much this felt like a Westerosi story. Like, it's got your political intrigue, it's got your violence, it's got your big joust tournament thingy going on, and it's just got all the elements that remind me of Game of Thrones when I really loved it. Like, you've got all this in-family bickering, you've got the Hand of the King being like, I don't like this guy, but I like this guy, and it's all just this infighting politics, but there's this violence and there's this grand epic kind of grandiose to it all, and it's just really exciting. Like, off the bat, this first episode is fantastic. It's so much fun. There are a couple little things here and there that really annoyed me, but they were mostly just things where they're like, hey, this thing that you used to be excited about for the last 10 years of your life, but it actually ruined everything in your life, and then you were really sad for 3 years, and then you were like, why did I ever get so connected? Why did I get so emotionally connected? The Long Night? You expected The Long Night to be more than one night? Well, it was just called The Long Night. It really only implies that it was one night long. I guess that's on me for presuming The Long Night wasn't just a single long night. That was very dark, I'll admit, very dark, but not as long as I was thinking it would be. That's for sure. So let's get straight to that. The only thing I didn't really like in this episode is right towards the end, he's just like, hey, the Targaryens, I'm Mr. King Targaryen, I'm gonna make you Mrs. Targaryen Queen later. And we've got this whole dream thing going on, which I used to love. I was like, oh, the Targaryen dreams, all these things, all poems and fantasies, and is it real, is it not, is it prophecy, is it this and that, and all those things, which I used to absolutely love. And I just think that if you're doing this, it's set 200 years in the past, you don't have to worry about all this long night, prince that was promised shit. Like, yes, this all happened, and maybe it's just going to be in this first episode where you go, hey, well, this was actually a thing, we're going to have to include it. But it's like, the Long Night and the White Walkers was so botched, so just so bad in the end. They're so they epitomize everything that didn't work towards the end. So it really frustrates me that at the end of this episode, you've got a Ramanjuwadi score, it's beautiful, it's amazing, it's epic, she gets crowned, and I'm like, oh, this is so good, we just got a Targaryen civil war. A bunch of inbred, long, silver-haired, dragon-riding psychopaths, and they're all just gonna infight. This is brilliant, this is so separate to what we got. But at the same time, we've got Starks and we've got Baratheons, we've got all these people, we've got Hightower, we've got Old Town, we've got all these words and things I know and love, but we're not associated with Game of Thrones. But then at the end, he's like, hey, we have a dream, and there's going to be a long night. It's going to be the longest, but single night. Like, don't think it's going to be long over more than one night. It's just one very darkly lit night, and it's going to be the destruction of everything. But then actually, a little girl is going to jump from somewhere and stab. So I don't know. All this prophecy stuff is just nonsense. There's going to be some zombies, and then they kill them very easily. They were just kind of scared for a while because it seemed like they'd be more of a threat. And just bringing all of that up, and tying it into everything with her and being like, this is a secret we passed on from king to king to king. It's very important. It's like, no, no. Like, no. Just don't bring it up, because now I'm angry, and the episode ended, and I'm left with just being like, oh, that's right, I remember Game of Thrones, the thing that I loved for so long, and was so obsessed and so excited for so long, and then just impossibly infuriated by it all. But once again, I think I'm getting tied back down into that Game of Thrones, So let's talk about House of the Dragon and what it did right. So I saw my favourite doctor have doggy-style sex while a bunch of people watched from another room. That's not really something I expected to ever see in my life, and it was uncomfortable and a little weird. He's very muscular now, just ripped. He's like, I don't know, made me feel very unpleasant. Also, there's a scene where he does a big speech and there's a big orgy going on, And it's just surreal to see him in the Game of Thrones world and landscape. I think that was the main thing that I was like, I'm always excited to see him in something. Oh, he's going to be in Star Wars. Oh, he didn't appear. Was he meant to be Palpatine? That would have been great. Oh, he's going to be something in Terminator. Cameo for 5 seconds. Okay, that's fine. Oh, he's going to be this. Oh, he's going to be in a Marvel movie. Oh, it's the worst one ever made. God damn it, Morbius. God damn it. He just keeps being in things and they're not really good. And it's just like, oh, but he's the best Doctor. He's such a good actor. I want to see him succeed. I want to see him be good in something. And then seeing that he's going to be a Targaryen in New Game of Thrones, it's like, oh, but I hate New Game of Thrones. I don't like the idea of it, this and that and that, all the things. But then that last trailer came out and I was like, I shouldn't get excited, but it looked good. And it was good. And he was great. I was so nervous about his portrayal. And like, I still think it's going to take a long time for me to see him as Daemon Targaryen and not as Matt Smith of House Targaryen. And I think I'm always going to kind of see him as the Doctor. I just love him as the Doctor. So that's really just on me. But his performance was really, really fun. He's villainous. He's evil. He's like really brash and arrogant and violent. That scene where he takes the gold cloaks and he just goes and beats up a bunch of people and he kills them and beheads them and all these really violent, horrible things. I actually saw him. I wasn't like, hey, well, the Doctor doesn't do that. And it did even get to that point in the episode where he's jousting and he gets knocked off the horse and he gets beaten and the guy's like, yield. And I'm like, I reckon he's going to stand up and just stab this guy. And like, already he's excitingly unpredictable. He's violent, he's scary, he's smug and arrogant. And already I'm like, I'm on his side. Maybe it is because it's Matt Smith and I don't hate him and I'm so excited to love Matt Smith in another non-the Doctor role. But I'm right on his side. Like at the end of the episode when he clearly doesn't get chosen for the throne and Mrs. not Daenerys, but the new Daenerys, Rhaenyra, Casares, Viserys, Blairys, whatever her name is, new Daenerys, where she's like, I will actually be crowned the king. She's great. I actually really enjoyed her too. But already I'm like, I can see which side of the Civil War I'm coming on. Like she's got a golden dragon, he's all cool. But his is like a red, evil, long, serpenty dragon. And he's Matt Smith. He's already been beheading people. And he jousts. And he's arrogant and smug. And I can't wait for him to kind of get the upper hand at one point. But then his smug arrogance is going to, lose him you can all see it kind of playing out in certain ways. And I'm very, very excited for all this. I just love the idea of a big civil war between all the Targaryens. There's a line where they're like, there are 10 alive dragons right now, which is just crazy. Like, Are we going to get a bunch of dragons fighting, like 10 of them on screen at once, which would be madness. I'm really excited for all of that madness. And his absolutely horrific line where he's like, air for a day. Naughty boy. Absolutely horrendous thing to say, but I also love how we didn't see him say it. So it's like, it's just conjecture and hearsay, and he doesn't deny it. He just says, oh, we grieve in our own ways. But maybe he's like, oh, hey, you all think I'm saying this? Like the Hand of the King might have just been pointing fingers. I love the Hand of the King as well. He's like really diabolical and scheming. He's already little fingering all over the place, but also Matt Smith seems like kind of not the right guy for the king. So I understand where he's coming from, but already there's just so much tension and drama with all of these political infighting family thingies going on. And I'm just all here for it. Like, it's surprisingly engaging already. I really can't see this becoming as obsessive and interesting as Game of Thrones. There's kind of something already where I'm like, hey, it's just Targaryens in King's Landing. And yes, it's going to separate and do all that kind of stuff the way Game of Thrones did. But I can't see this being the way that Game of Thrones was, where there's just so many hundreds of characters that you get 3 minutes with everyone each episode, and it kind of feels like cutscenes, snapshots, and you get one scene each episode. Maybe it'll become that, but it feels way more self-contained, which is really interesting. But I also just don't see it being something where I get so overly obsessed, mostly because Game of Thrones made sure that I would never love anything ever again, and I would never open myself up to be in love with something, because I can't be hurt again. I can't. I'm not strong enough. But it also just feels like I kind of see it being less complicated. But I also like that. Like, I don't want them to keep being like, oh, in 200 years, there's going to be the biggest, epicest battle against zombies ever. Oh, we got to get ready. It's like, I don't want any of that. Just have it in fighting. Have a Game of Thrones. Like, I loved how at the end of this episode, he's like, we're just going to have a big old Game of Thrones here. It's just going to be another big old Game of Thrones. I want this girl to be on the throne, and everyone else wants that guy to be on the throne, and this guy wants this guy, but this guy said this thing on this guy, and it's all just a who's going to sit on the big old Iron Throne. Speaking of the Iron Throne, I absolutely love the added touch of, like, from the books where he's, like, sitting on the throne, he keeps getting cuts because it's all spiky and cutty, and it's like, good, that's sick, I love it. The throne itself, they've given it a bit of an upgrade. It's got all the swords everywhere along the edges. It feels a bit messy and like kind of cluttered, and it's like there's a lot going on, I feel like. But I also think maybe I'm just so used to seeing the clean cut Game of Thrones throne, and this one is like, and there's more thingies everywhere. And yes, it's more book accurate. I'll chuck up the best drawing of what the throne looks like in the books here or here. Maybe here, doesn't really matter. But that image always is what I imagine in the books. Like, I just remember seeing that. Some guys, like, someone sent it to me and he's like, look at this drawing. I'm like, that's the best throne ever. And I see why they didn't do that big kind of thing with the throne at the top, because then you're framing everyone, and it's just going to be really difficult if they're really far up. So I understand they bring the throne down and have all the swords kind of come across, but it feels a bit like messy, and there's like, it's a lot of swords going on everywhere, and it feels kind of like staged chaos in a way. But I also appreciate that they're like, no, there's swords everywhere, and it's just crazy madness, but it's all cutty. But the other ones just feel so iconic, and I just watched it for so many years that maybe it's just a bit weird to see. They're just like, and more swords. But I really like the idea that they're all stabby. That's a lot of fun. Because the Iron Throne is not only the most dangerous seat, it's literally the most dangerous seat to sit on. And that's just awesome. And I can't wait for more of those little bits and pieces that are kind of more book accurate, but not just to be more book accurate, but just to kind of broaden the scope of this universe and the idea of this world that can be so grand and epic. But right at the start of the show for Game of Thrones, they didn't have the budget to be like, and there's 10 dragons, and the throne's got 1 billion swords, and this and that. And we see, like the jousting tournament. If you look at season 1, episode 3 or 4, whatever, when they have the joust, there's like 15 people sitting on like fences, whereas in this, it's big and grand and epic. And it's just really exciting to see it already at that budget, with still the politics and the nuance that we, came to know and love from early Game of Thrones. But I suppose the biggest issue, and the only really issue towards the end, was just the writing. The writing was just so bad in Game of Thrones. So is the writing good in this? Yeah, it's pretty good. There's nothing that stands out as being just like exceptional and just completely fantastic. Like, it's just pretty damn good. I think it just has to not be terrible. It just has to not be clunky and bad and awful. There is no kind of moment or scene or character where I just see them and go, hey, it's Prince Charming. And then Prince Charming's like, hoo, I'm having sex with my sister. Push child out of window. What the things we do for love. And I'm just like, what? This is going to be the greatest show ever. There's no moment like that. It really just kind of rely on me to love everything from Game of Thrones. Like, he's the Hand of the King. I love Hands of the Kings. I love a Game of Thronesy thing. A lot of the side characters and cameos and things here and there were mostly just me being like, a Baratheon? I know Baratheon. I remember Baratheon, and a lot of that kind of stuff. But it also doesn't feel like it relies on things. Like, it doesn't have a big scene where it goes, oh, you like Targaryens? And one of the Targaryens stands there and burns 6 people when she says, Dracarys. Or, a moment where it's like, hey, remember when you loved that? Well, this again. We actually get a Dracarys scene, but it's a sad Dracarys at the funeral when she's like, Dracarys, and he burns the funeral pyre at the mum's funeral, which was like really sad and a nice little cheeky subversion of expectation, because I would have expected the first time we hear of Dracarys would just be like exactly how Daenerys did, like being like, remember Daenerys? Well, Daenerys again, like that. Remember Daenerys? I'm like, I do. I wish you would stop trying to remind me of something that I loved, but just thinking about it just makes me. You know what, to be fair, I was angry. I was so angry for such a long time. Now I look back and I'm a disappointed dad. I know you can do better. I know there's better in you. You've shown me that you can be better. But you just grew into something where I'm a disappointed dad. So House of the Dragon episode 1 is out, and I loved it mostly. And I can't wait to love this show for 5 to 7 years, and then the last season completely ruin and destroy my soul again. But at that point, I'm going to be like in my mid-30s. So I think at that point, I'm mostly just going to be, very conscious of how old I am and really just be focusing on that. I'll probably go on bald at that point. So I'm probably really just, freaking out about that at that point. Grey hairs, balding at the front, just, there's going to be so many other things that are ruining my life. I think I won't care as much if House of the Dragon is bad. But if it is, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, fuck. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I would love to know what everyone thought of the first episode of House of the Dragon.